The silence that followed Eli Turner's simple act of offering water was heavier than gunfire. The Apache warriors did not move at once. They stood like carved stone, faces unreadable, eyes sharp and ancient, weighing a moment that did not fit the world they had learned to survive in. Eli could feel his heartbeat in his throat. His fingers twitched near his rifle, but he forced them to relax. He knew deep in his bones that if he reached for a weapon now, everything would end in blood. So he did the hardest thing a man raised on fear could do. He waited. The eldest Apache, a tall man with silver threaded through his black hair and scars, like old rivers across his arms, stepped forward. His name, Eli would later learn, was Nantan Kai, a war chief who had buried 3 sons in conflicts with settlers and soldiers alike. Kai's eyes locked onto Eli's, not with hatred, but with something far more dangerous, judgment. He studied the rancher's cracked lips, the dust-caked clothes, the empty fearlessness in his posture. Then his gaze dropped to the water. Slowly, deliberately, Kai knelt. The movement sent a ripple of tension through both sides. Apache hands tightened on spear shafts. Eli's wife Sarah gasped behind him, clutching the doorway. Even the wind seemed to stop. Kai lifted the gourd, sniffed it, then dipped 2 fingers inside and tasted the water. First clean, cold, real, no trick. He drank. It was not a gulp. It was not desperate. It was ceremonial, like a prayer. When he finished, Kai handed the gourd back to Eli and spoke in broken English, his voice low but steady. Water is life. Those 3 words struck Eli harder than any bullet ever had. Kai gestured, and one by one, the Apache warriors stepped forward. Eli and Sarah worked without speaking, passing water, filling cups, letting the well's rope creak again and again. Some of the Apache were wounded. One young warrior had an arrowhead lodged deep in his thigh, the blood dark and sticky. Sarah, trembling but resolute, tore strips from an old sheet and knelt to bind the wound. No one stopped her. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. When the sun dipped lower, Kai raised his hand. The warriors stepped back, reforming their circle. Kai looked at Eli again, this time with something new in his eyes, a recognition that this man was not like the others, who had come with fire and fences and lies. You had choice, Kai said. You choose life, Eli swallowed. I was just doing what was right. Kai shook his head. Right is rare. With that, the Apache turned and vanished into the red hills as quietly as they had appeared, leaving behind nothing but footprints and a silence that felt different, lighter, almost hopeful. That night, Eli could not sleep. He sat on the porch, with his rifle across his knees, staring into the dark. Sarah joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. Do you think they'll come back? She whispered. Eli nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. But not to kill us. Eli thought of Kai's eyes, of the way he'd drunk the water, like it mattered more than revenge. No, he said. I think they'll come back because something changed today. He was right. Over the following weeks, the land itself seemed to hold its breath. Neighbors came by, shaken and angry, when they heard what Eli had done. You gave water to Apaches? One rancher spat. You've doomed us all. They'll raid now, another warned. You showed weakness. Eli listened, said little. At night, he dreamed of the well running dry, of blood soaking into the dust. But every morning the well still flowed, clear, cold, unbroken. Then one dawn, Sarah spotted figures on the ridge again. This time, Eli did not reach for his rifle. The Apache approached slowly, openly. They carried no drawn weapons. Among them were women, elders, even children. Kai walked at the front. He raised a hand in greeting. We come to give, Kai said. From their packs, the Apache produced dried meat, woven blankets, herbs and medicines Sarah had never seen before. One elder touched the well's stone rim and whispered a prayer in Apache, pressing his forehead to it as if thanking an old friend. We share water, Kai said. Now we share ground. Word spread fast, faster than fear ever had. Soldiers arrived days later, bluecoats stiff with authority, rifles polished and ready. Their captain looked at the Apache camp near Eli's ranch and then at Eli himself. You harboring hostiles? The captain demanded. Eli stepped forward, heart pounding but his voice steady. They're not hostiles here. They're neighbors. The captain laughed, sharp and cruel. "You're a fool." Maybe he was, but when the soldiers rode away without firing a shot, outnumbered, uncertain, Eli realized something profound. The war had not ended with treaties or bullets. It had cracked open with a cup of clear water. And as the sun rose over the land shared by two peoples who had every reason to hate each other, a fragile, impossible truth took root. Sometimes history does not change with a scream. Sometimes it changes with a man who refuses to let another die of thirst, the fragile. Peace born from a cup of clear water did not go untested, because history never allows mercy to live without challenge. Weeks after the Apache camp settled near Eli Turner's land, fear returned riding on iron hooves. A larger military column arrived at dawn, cannons creaking, flags snapping like warnings in the wind. This time they did not come to talk. They came to erase. The commander had orders: clear the land, remove the threat, burn anything that stood in the way of expansion. Eli stood between the soldiers and the Apache camp, his boots sinking into the same dust both peoples now shared. Behind him were Apache families. In front of him were rifles pointed at his chest. The commander gave him one chance to step aside. Eli didn't. His voice shook, but his words did not. He spoke of water, of peace, of how no attack had come from these people since that day. The commander laughed and raised his hand to give the order. That was when Nantan Kai stepped forward, unarmed, lifting the same gourd Eli had offered weeks ago. He poured water onto the dry ground between them, letting it soak into the earth like a witness. "If you spill blood," Kai said quietly, "you poison the land you want to own." The moment stretched thin as a blade. Then, from the hills, settlers arrived, neighbors who had once mocked Eli, now standing beside him, carrying no weapons, only resolve. They had seen the peace. They had tasted the change. Faced with unity instead of fear, the commander hesitated. Orders mean little when the world is watching. Slowly, bitterly, he lowered his hand. The soldiers withdrew, not in defeat, but in uncertainty, and uncertainty was enough. That day, an unspoken treaty was born. The Apache remained. The ranch survived. Years passed. Children grew playing near the well, Apache and settler alike, drinking from the same rope, the same bucket, the same promise. Eli grew old, his hair turning the color of dust and salt. When he died, Nantan Kai stood at his grave and poured clear water onto the earth one last time. "This man," he said, "ended a war without firing a shot, and so the land remembered. Not the battles, not the hatred, but the day a poor rancher chose compassion over fear and changed history forever." If this story moved you, if you believe small human choices can change the world, subscribe to the channel. These stories live because you listen, and every subscribe helps keep them alive.